Welcome to Ministries That Podcast, where I talk to successful ministry leaders about how they're using podcasting to amplify their mission and grow their ministry so you can too. I'm Tim Hall, your host and owner of Sonomorphic, a podcast production company that specializes in podcasting for ministries. My guests today are Jamie and Blake of 3% Co. They're friends and therapists who have counseled hundreds of men in their practices and the co-hosts of the podcast 3%, a men's mental health podcast. We're going to talk about how the idea for their ministry was born and why a podcast was their first offering, how they've used Substack alongside the podcast to grow a community, and how having a podcast has enabled them to have conversations with their heroes. So let's jump right in. Here's my conversation with Jamie and Blake. Well, Jamie and Blake, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah,
we're glad to be here.
All right, so you guys started 3% about a year ago, back in March of 2025. And the description of the podcast reads, "Welcome to 3%. This is your space. If you're on a journey of pursuing holistic masculinity, growing your emotional awareness, and cultivating deeper relationships and authentic faith. We're here to provide evidence-based guidance and proven strategies drawn from our experiences as therapists, friends, and mentors. And we aren't here to give you the gimmicks or superficial hacks. We're not telling you who to be. We're helping you to uncover what gets in the way of being the man that you want to be and offering you the authentic tools needed for tangible growth." And then I read on a post when you were announcing the podcast that you guys are growing a community of men who are pursuing holistic masculinity and integrating their faith and mental health to have deeper connections and to be less alone. So I'm glad to have you on the show today, guys, to hear about your podcasting journey. So to start off, just tell me a little bit about, your year in at this point. How has having a podcast helped you amplify your mission and grow your ministry?
It's interesting because the podcast, especially in the first year, is our ministry. It is the thing. We have much bigger goals and dreams for what is really a brand and a business we're building, but we started with just the podcast. And mostly that was because nobody was overtly asking us to do this. It had been something, which I'm sure we'll talk about, that was coming up a lot in our friendship and sort of like a thing that was helping us that we were then using with clients in our therapy practices. And so we thought that people might need what we had to offer, but nobody was asking us. So it was a combination of let's see if this medium can help us really validate or solidify this idea. And also maybe we could even figure out what the heck we're even talking about at the same time, because we're talking with guests and exploring what we're wanting to do and all of that at the same time. So, and maybe Jamie can touch on how the podcast itself has impacted us and then the brand at large, which was way more than we, I think, hoped for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that's what it was the thing that we started with. And we had no idea what we're doing. And we're 15 years too late to start a podcast.
Yeah, right. To Blake's point, the purpose of starting the podcast in the first place was to grow the platform in order to do the things we want to do eventually. I mean, our whole purpose in starting it was not necessarily for it to be our main offering as a community or as a ministry. However, it's definitely become something that we are both pretty fond of, and I think it will maintain as one of our main things, because the growth over time of the community has shown us that it's incredibly validating for people to feel a part of something regularly. Yeah. And for us, we've referenced this a lot, but our friend Bobby, who helped us kind of start the podcast, would encourage us to be aware of our curse of knowledge, things that we have worked really hard to learn, whether that's in our personal recovery or in grad school, that we just assume because now we've arrived at knowing those things that everybody else also knows them, which I won't speak for Blake, but it's very easy for me that shined a light on my belief in my own value of I believed that I was earning my way to what everybody else already knew. And so once I got there, it was I don't want to share this. It feels kind of elementary. So I don't want to seem condescending to people. And it turns out I wouldn't have found that condescending. when I was first getting into this space for myself, so neither do they. And as we put out shows along the way in the last year, I will say it's helped grow our community in that there are a lot of things we needed to hear that other people also apparently want to hear. And I think it's grown us in that there's a lot of areas that we want to grow as individuals and as therapists and as men. Now we just get the license to ask whoever we want to learn it from to come talk to us about it for an hour. And people have been incredibly generous that way. And their platforms have helped grow our platform.
Nice. Yeah, so take me back to the beginning, because I think I saw a social post and then you mentioned it in episode 1. You guys didn't start out to create this ministry necessarily. I think you said it was actually, you were thinking maybe a design creative agency, and you went to a cabin, you were going to spend some time figuring out what you were going to do. Tell me about that time in the cabin and what came out of it.
Okay.
Tell them, Blake.
Yeah, we have been friends for years, long before we were both therapists, and both have entrepreneurial spirits and both have desire to help people beyond like the one-on-one ways we can. And I had a background in some online marketing. I used to build websites for therapists. Jamie has a business degree, comes from a family really of business-minded entrepreneurs. And so we were like, man, we need to do something together. Like that would be really fun. And what was felt like the most apparent need that we could build something around was marketing, website design, branding for therapists, because there's a lot of good therapists that have very non-welcoming presences online.
Yeah, sure.
I think the way I said it last time was there's a lot of therapists who are not represented in the way they deserve online.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily at a fault to their own, but like when we get that training in grad school and or certain people don't have that like maybe experience in creative spaces. Anyway, so that's what we thought we were going to do.
Yeah.
We go to this cabin to kind of plan it out, vision cast it. And it just became very apparent pretty quick to us, like the first night, that, God was stirring something different and had been in each of us, and that we could have figured out a way to make an offer that would meet a pretty quick demand around that, but it just wasn't where our hearts were. Our hearts were more around, we didn't know exactly what it meant, but like, how could we help men experience some of what we've experienced in the healthy contexts that we've experienced in church and 12-step recovery and as therapists. And so that's when the idea, whatever date that was, Jamie, you know it.
I think it was April of 2023.
That's when that really started to shift. And we were like, okay, well, what could that look like? There's plenty of men's brands, ministries, coaches, like things out there. What do we uniquely have to offer? And what could that look like? So, I would say it was pretty surprising to us leaving that cabin.
Yeah. I think the marketing agency was really not a bad what. It was just the wrong why for us.
Yeah.
And still, like we've said it before somewhere, but if you are listening to this and you're like, man, I wonder what I could do with all of my creative skills and entrepreneurship, go make a marketing agency for therapists, because you'll do pretty well. And then we'll say congratulations to you, because we're not trying to do that anymore. And it's a great business idea. But the why for us was not strong enough to sustain the what for that business. We would have burned out pretty quick.
Thankfully, we knew that.
Yeah.
And so you got to the point where you realized, hey, let's do this other thing. We're going to call it 3%. And you can tell us a little bit about that and why that's the name. But then you decided, hey, let's start a podcast. Like that's the first best step. What made you come to that conclusion?
I would love to hear what you think, because I actually don't even remember how podcast became the first idea of what we should do.
Because I was excited about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Blake is a really good writer and writes a lot of long form content on Substack. If any of your listeners are engaged on that platform, go find Blake on there. He writes really meaningful and engaging stuff. And so one of the ideas that we had coming into it was we'll just write long form content about this idea of 3%, which I'll let Blake explain in a moment. I have a background in music. I was a audio engineer, played music, I think even we can talk about it in a minute, but there's even the theme song for our podcast is something I made. And both Blake and I love consuming podcasts. Mm-hmm. We listen to a ton of podcasts. In grad school, it was a great way to learn more relationally for me because I did an online grad school program. And just to learn something from somebody who is passionate about it was nice. And then prior to that, it was really important for us in recovery. Yeah. There's a lot of good recovery podcasts, and to get experience, strength, and hope outside of meetings from guys on podcasts. So both of us were passionate about that medium. I think Blake didn't have an initial comfort with it because he didn't have an initial comfort with recording.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I did a little convincing of him for sure for us to do a podcast. And I just thought, I don't know of a podcast that at least people recommend to me regularly that focuses on where we are and where we want to be and the in between of that, and not necessarily a solution to your pain. And so I think both of us thought this is a fun way to community build what it means to be holistically masculine. Like, we don't have to be the arbiters of truth. We can go to people we respect, have them come on, help them inform the idea of what holistic masculinity is, and not just come to a community and be like, hey, us two guys know what it is to be holistically masculine. Instead, we're trying to form that through the voices of a pretty diverse group of people. So I think that's how the podcast idea took root, as not only a good idea, but what we're starting with. And then Blake did end up writing Substack newsletters for us every week about each podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned the meaning.
Yeah.
I like telling this story because when we went to that cabin, because I think we're already thinking about marketing, branding as a business. The way I remember it, Jamie, is we were thinking about marketing and branding for this thing we were building before we were even really thinking about what the thing is we were building.
Totally.
And so the cabin was out in Tennessee on Fernvale Road. And I remember that because originally the name for 3% was Fernvale. And I went onto this whole rabbit trail breaking down the meanings. Apparently, if you want to do some of your own research, there's a lot of deep meaning, even scripturally, with the words fern and veil that could easily be contributed to what we were trying to build for men. And then that was clear that that was not a good name. And
that was us getting excited and it being unbelievably confusing. And we had
got some good feedback from people of no, this isn't it. They were also but what even is this thing? We're we don't really know yet, but what do you think about the name? And so 3% is a armchair theory that Jamie and I came up with in our friendship. I'll give a little bit more of a backstory than maybe I usually would. If you're unfamiliar with 12-step recovery, a lot of the general reason people get into 12-step recovery is due to a lack of being honest with themselves and with others, which then leads to this, whatever the addiction is. So then you get into recovery and you learn how to start being rigorously honest. It's a phrase that comes from the rooms in those meetings with other people. And so let's just make up a number. Say we were 50% honest with ourselves and others prior to recovery, which is generous.
Super generous.
But let's just say that. And then let's say at our very best in those rooms, we learn how to really show up and say things that we normally would not say to anybody. The things that we're I'll take this to our grave, be it something that happened to me or something that I've done or even just a thought that I have. And so we realized that even in our recovery at our very best, we would be 97% honest with each other. And I don't remember which one of us it was. I think it was Jamie at a time was making a call. We're talking, he's sharing something. And he was really the 3% of what I am afraid to say is blank. And we didn't think oh my gosh, this is something that we could use. It just became a permission slip for us to say the thing to each other that we were afraid of, that brought us the most shame, that we for sure thought oh, this is where the judgment's going to come. And so we would just start being okay, I need to share 3% with you. And it could even be a conflict we had with each other that we were afraid to bring up. Our kind of thing we say is at our very best, people are 97% honest with themselves and others. It's the 3% they keep to themselves. They're the most ashamed by, fearful of behaviors, things that have happened, desires. That 3% keeps us bound to more shame and loneliness, from which a lot of other issues stem. So then we become therapists, and we're like using it with clients, and our clients are starting to say in session, like they're telling us something about their story, and then they pause, and then they're like, okay, the 3% is, and then they share this thing. And you just see this like relief and this connection. So as we're building out this brand, I remember we were sitting at a coffee shop, and Jamie and I are very like, we love apparel, and there's a lot of, no digs to anybody who's listening to this that might have this apparel, but there's a lot of apparel in faith spaces or mental health spaces that are just not things I personally would wear, or that a lot of the friends I would have would wear. Like, I believe that I need to feel my feelings, but I'm most likely not going to wear a t-shirt that says feel your feelings.
Sure.
Right.
But we saw this guy that had this cool t-shirt on. It was from like the brand Seeger maybe or something, that had this like cool font and design on the back. And we were like, what if we had like a logo? I think maybe we'd already thought about 3% at this time. Like, oh, it's right in front of us. This is what the thing needs to be called. And we can really build from that. What if we had a logo that just looked cool, that we could put on a t-shirt or a hat and would make somebody go, hey, what is 3%? And then all of a sudden, it's like a doorway into these two strangers are having a conversation about what does it mean to actually be vulnerable and authentic. And so we had a round of hats made, 25, I think, our first round, with this logo that we had designed, like before we did anything. There wasn't even really a thing yet, but there's 25 people out there that have a 3% hat.
Yeah. And honestly, that making the hat kind of jump started us making the whole brand.
Yep.
Because then the company who made
right.
the apparel, their name's Mission Merch.
Yeah, it's a local Tennessee
down
company
in Columbia, Tennessee.
Nice.
They have a podcast as well. Okay. And they're very, as the name would suggest, they're very mission oriented in what they do. So they had us on to talk about the idea of 3%. We had no offerings, no podcast at the time. And so basically we went on there, said what it was and what we were planning. And we were like, I guess we got to do it now. I mean, we kind of spoke it into existence. So they made our hats for us, and it really kicked us into gear, got us pretty excited. And it really was speaking it into existence, that it was like, we need to do this, and we're just scared. Yeah.
What made you scared?
And what didn't?
It's a new,
just all new.
New medium. Yeah. We are incredibly vulnerable on our podcast. I mean, there's one episode where I'm just weeping for an entire episode.
It's basically a live therapy session led by somebody else.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of like our stories being known by our community, and
being known by people we don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it was less scary for the people I don't know to know, and more scary for people that I fringe know, like people I knew before who are still connected to me on social media or something, who are just getting like a really close-up view of me. And so I think that was scarier in idea than it was in practicality. Now that it's all out there, I'm just like, yeah, this is great. I'm happy about all this. Yeah. But the unknown of it, how to make it happen, all the things I imagine a lot of people feel before starting anything, or at least I'm more this way. Certainly, Blake is so helpful to me in this. I am much more fear-based when it comes to starting something because I want it to be perfect. Blake is really good at dreaming and being willing to like act on those dreams and let things, things can mess up, fail, and he'll learn from it. And he kind of pulls me closer to that as we work together. So that's been very helpful. But it was still scary of like, we care about this. We want this to really matter to people. And I think that's what probably was the scariest part of all of it, is what if this doesn't matter?
Yep.
Yeah. So then you finally decided, hey, we're going to start the podcast. You figured out what you wanted to say. And the title of episode 1 is, I think it's like episode 1 on the 5th try or something like that. They took multiple times to get it down. What was some of the hurdles that you were facing of like, hey, this isn't quite it? And then what made you finally decide, hey, this is the one? So like, surely there's other ministry leaders that are listening that are in the same spot as you were about a year ago. What helped you get unstuck?
I will say for me, I think it was for both of us, what I just named about how much we care about this. I mean, the 3% idea is incredibly personal. This is not something we came up with for this podcast. This was what Blake and I used to recover from a porn addiction. And so we would call each other and say, I need to share my 3% with you. And that was our shorthand. That was our personal space now being given to other people, hoping it matters to them as well. And so the first episode was a culmination of a desire for a lot of those things to work.
Sure.
And then being afraid of like, this is the first impression of whether this is going to work or not.
Yeah.
And so one take in, I'll credit that to like, we didn't know, we just needed a rep.
Yeah.
2 takes in, sure, that's another rep. 3 takes in, I'm now nitpicking. 4 takes in, beyond nitpicking, I'm overthinking. And 5th take was probably Blake, I would imagine, going, no, we just need to send this.
Yeah, like it actually sounds fine.
Yeah, we need to chill out on worrying that the audio is perfect or the video is perfect. And we just need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and human and get it out there.
Yeah, for me, one of the things that kept me stuck is a lot of the things Jamie said, like just the exposure. I don't have a problem being exposed, but it is just a different form in the way that we are wanting to do it by really leading with our stories and our own vulnerabilities, which may be different in a ministry context, but at least in like a clinical therapeutic context, I think it's changing a lot, but there is kind of a general sense that like therapists don't disclose. And there's a lot of reasons to that, especially in the therapeutic room, why you don't disclose, and there's boundaries for that and ethical reasons and all that that we hold to. But even like therapists, I think historically just tend to be more private, even like online for various convictions and reasons, which is great. It's just not our style or personality. So there was that little fear too of like, how do we balance this where it's like clients are like hearing things that I wouldn't say in session, but they're hearing it because they listen to the podcast, and what is that like? And so it was like all that kind of stuff. And then like I have a photography, videography background, and I like really wanted it to be visually and aesthetically. If Jamie wanted it to sound perfect because of his audio engineer background, I wanted it to be visually perfect. And we just didn't have the resources and or the funds to make both of those things happen.
Really to do either of them.
Yeah, right. So we had to kind of let some of that perfectionism, I guess, go. And it's not just perfectionism. It's like both of those are crafts that him and I both enjoy and could help benefit the podcast. And, you know, everybody else's podcasts have great visual clips and all this stuff. But we just were like, we just can't do that. I mean, we don't want to let that be a barrier, which I would say has been a real, not only like growth opportunity, like everybody talks about doing something scared and letting it not be perfect as being a growth opportunity. But it has taught me also, especially in today's AI world, that to be imperfect and not like that polished actually, I think, helps build trust.
Sure.
Like, I don't know if is this podcast just audio or video as well?
I use the video just for social clips.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so if they're seeing this social clip, like, I don't know if you guys saw it, but as we were talking, my ceiling tile back here almost fell out of the ceiling.
Wondering about that. I was like, I don't feel like it was like that.
It wasn't. And I didn't notice it. And then I don't know, my fear was like, oh gosh, this looks so bad. So I have adjusted my whole screen and like put my head in front of it. And then as we're talking about this, I'm like, oh wait, whatever. Like, this is just the reality of my office right now. And that thing just fell out and I can't control it. And we've had moments like that on the show. And I think that's actually helped build credibility and trust in the audience because it's not perfect. And you're like, oh yeah, like my ceiling tile does that too. Well, probably nobody else's does that. It's probably just mine, but you get the point.
It's brought a lot of lightness to the podcast too. Because what our focus is could be pretty heavy if you allow it to be.
Right.
And so the humanness, I think, of both of us and being honest about that, which is also helpful, has brought humor into it, which both of us need, and I think has endeared us to people who listen to us.
So you've had a bunch of different guests on the show. Some very well-known folks like Ben Zobrist, who was the MVP of the World Series several years back. You've had Dr. John Deloney on, Annie F. Downs, and so many others. What's been your guest booking strategy to have some of these conversations and bringing your own personality to it? What is that like?
Wow. Even that you called it a guest booking strategy made me feel good.
I had already read that question prior.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that one.
For behind the scenes for everybody, Tim sent me all these questions beforehand. And I was so excited for when you asked it because I knew that Blake was going to have that response.
Oh, man, Tim, if we had a strategy, that would be brilliant. I mean,
we have a much better strategy this year than we had last year.
Totally. Yeah, we were just like shooting from the hip. And some of the people we had connections with already were in Nashville. And it's a very like everybody knows everybody. You just make a few calls and people are willing to connect. But then honestly, it's just been, I don't know if it's the space we're in, the mental health / faith space. Not everybody has been generous. I can think of a few people, Jamie. But the generosity of our guests, like John Deloney has a massive platform. He spoke at Jamie's church. Jamie sent him a DM on Instagram. He's got like 4 million followers. Jamie had what, a couple thousand?
Not even.
And he just responded, was like, yeah, I would love to do that, you know?
Yeah.
Which...
that speaks more to him than to us.
Totally. And like just the willingness. I don't have any problem. You can ask Jamie, like walking up to people in public. I actually walked up to a guy at a coffee shop and essentially was like, hey, we have this podcast. You want to be on it? And
he's the most courageous networker I know. I used to say fearless, but that's dismissive of the fact that he does still feel fear. It's courageous. He is the most courageous networker I have ever met.
Thanks. Wow. So that's encouraging. And so I've had encouraged, like Jamie, I remember when he wanted to like reach out to John and I was like, why don't you just send him a message?
I was like, that's not going to be good enough. And he was like, well, we can cross that bridge when we come to it. And I was like, you're right.
I think so.
So that's been our strategy so far.
Yeah. I mean, yes, a lot of connections. We both have lived here in Nashville for a while and have both done some work that has gotten us good relationships with other people.
Yeah.
And those people have been generous to help us get in with some, like Annie, for example, is because of a connection with a friend who she trusts. And because he trusts us and she trusts him, she was willing to come on.
Yeah.
So I think it was leveraging the relationships you have to create connections in the relationships you don't. That's been very helpful to us. And then truly, Blake has just been very courageous in asking people and has brought that out in me in the places where I want to talk to somebody.
Nice.
And so it's this combination of believing in what we have to offer. Like, people want to come be a part of this conversation that we're creating. And a lot of people, if they have the flexibility and you reach out to them and compliment them and talk about how much you like their voice, like most people won't turn down an opportunity to talk about themselves or their book that they're writing.
And worst case, they say no.
Yeah.
You know, and
you just move on to the next
we're
one.
Exactly where we would be if we didn't reach out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good point. And you said you have more of a strategy going into this year. Tell me a little bit about that. What are you refining and what does that look like?
We're changing the structure of how we do episodes in a month.
Okay.
So there's still going to be a weekly episode every month, but we have more of an idea of like how many guest episodes do we want to do this year? How many episodes of us do we want to do this year? How many like new content styles do we want to do this year? And when will they be? And so it's more so a structure of what we want. And then that allows for more creativity in seeking guests because then we need less of them. Last year we had 30 guests on the podcast, and that is incredible that many people were generous, but that was a lot of logistical load.
Yeah.
And that was also not as based on as we would want it to be on what do we think they could say specifically to our audience that we think our audience needs to hear right now. And so this year it's a little more aligned with, there's still some guests we're having on who are just like, we just want to talk to you because we think that whatever you're going to say is going to be good. And then there's a lot of guests who are coming on who we think, okay, you have something really important to say to our audience. We need to spend our time and resources speaking to you this year.
The other thing I would add for anybody listening who's starting out or in the beginning, I had this assumption. You have all these assumptions about podcasting before you get into it, that like we just had to be incredibly flexible to record whenever somebody needed to. We had a very tight window of when we can record, and we were kind of forced into that because we both are dads with young kids and have full practices. So it kind of forced us to do that. And so our recording window was on Thursdays from like 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And there were a couple guests that were like outside of that, but most what we did was just like, hey, we'd love to have you on. This is when we record, as opposed to like whatever works for you. Yeah. And to my surprise, at least, like majority of people were able to make a Thursday work.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. I think giving somebody less options actually was relieving for a lot of people who were trying to meet with us. Like they weren't looking at their whole schedule. They were looking at when's this window available in my next 6 weeks.
Yep.
And it really paid dividends for us.
Nice. Yeah, so let's go back to a few things that we've mentioned at the beginning. First off, you talked about the music, and Jamie, you have a background in audio and music, and I'd love to know for the song, Let's Be Honest, that you wrote for the podcast. Was that something that you're like, hey, we're starting this podcast, I want to write something for it? Or did it kind of already exist and then you're like, oh, this would work really well for the podcast? What was that experience like?
Blake and I were having a meeting about the different bumpers of the podcast. So for those of you listening, bumper meaning what's your hook at the beginning? What's your intro like? What's the meat like? And then what's the closing like? So obviously that led to what's the intro like? And we were considering, what do we want the music to feel like? Because the content of the show could be heavier, we wanted the song to be a little lighter, but without being cheesy. And so we were thinking through, I don't remember specifically, but I think we were trying to think through what songs fit that mold and what kind of artists do we think would fit that mold. And I left there and I went home and I had some inspiration around the hook, let's be honest. And so I was just like, you know what? I'll just sit down and I'll see what comes. And I wrote that song in about 20 minutes. And I sent that over to Blake to see like, hey, do you like the vibe of this? And he really liked it. And so long answer to a short question. Yeah, I wrote it for this podcast. But I really liked it. Had all the ingredients that I needed to be really creative, which is a clear need, a clear hook, and that kind of created the container for creativity for me that normally leads to an easy songwrite. And my buddy Chris Cron, who is actually pretty famous on social media for doing Beach Boy covers.
Okay.
He's become pretty famous doing that. And he actually just got to, because of his covers on Instagram, he recently got to go tour with the Beach Boys, which was sweet.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He played in their band. Incredibly talented, maybe the most talented singer I know. And yeah, I texted him. I'm not great at recording my own music. It gets into the space where I get too perfectionistic. So I have learned, because I have an album out too, I have learned over time that I need other people to help me make my music. And if I'm going to record, it's going to be other people's music. So I texted Chris, went over to his house, and he had a lot of fun, creative ideas. And he's an incredible keyboardist. So all the keys, a lot of the guitar, bass, that's all Chris.
Nice.
And then it's me singing mostly.
To me, I think to both of us, the intro, like the first little clip and then the music is one of the more important parts of the podcast. I have listened to many podcasts that I really enjoy and even like wanted to enjoy more, but the intro was such like a painful entry point that I just would like go to something else. And so it's like that first impression. And so I think we want to be really intentional of not just like, oh, let's just like pick a instrumental song and slap it on there, but like, let's actually spend money and be intentional with creating this entry point that's almost like somebody walking into your living room or walking into your brick and mortar store. Like, what's their first experience to it? So for us, it's like a hook from the episode that is really like, oh gosh, I want to know what the rest of that was. And then this song that kind of makes you feel a little good.
Yeah.
Bop a little bit in the car.
Keeps you light.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about too is Substack. So you mentioned that was something that you started doing at the beginning. And Blake, you write over there as well. And then you have Substack specifically for 3%. For those that don't know, what is Substack and what made it the right place to create a community for 3%?
I am obsessed with Substack. For those who don't know, it's social media still. It's essentially like social media platform and newsletter platform combined. So you can have your own email subscribers, but there's also on the app, there's a notes feed similar to what, I refuse to call it X because it just sounds weird, similar to what a Twitter feed was. You can like direct message. And I found out about it a few years ago, started writing on it. It's mostly the home for, it's really like the OG blogging days, like people who had long form home blogs or whatever, fashion blogs. It's kind of a space for that. So it was really built for writers and for readers who enjoyed long form content. So it's kind of like everybody who's tired of like the 60-second reels and just like the dopamine hits of this quick content. It's this place where you can host longer form conversations and interact with readers and read really interesting people. And I had been writing on it for a little bit, trying to figure it out. And the organic growth engine within Substack is really amazing. And it still is because it's still new. I don't know if Tim, do you know who Gary Vee is?
Yeah.
So Gary Vee is like a big, he invested in Instagram and Snapchat, like kind of sees all the things before they become something. He just created a Substack account like a month ago. And so it's even more like, okay, this is still in its early stage. And because of that, the organic growth is just really good. And I was just already familiar with it. And so I was like, let's just do our newsletter there instead of, whatever platform where there wouldn't be any growth organically. And it didn't, we got like 500 subscribers from it, just from being on there and from like the podcast and stuff. We have some more strategical ways we're planning on using it this year because we kind of weren't. It's really meant for long form content, like really thoughtful things that people can read. And I was just using it as like, here's our episode this week. Here are some bullet points about it, kind of like you would in a traditional email marketing. And it wasn't really performing. And I think that was because it's not that type.
Not what it's intended for.
So we have some more intentional ways we're going to use Substack to like continue to write some long form stuff. But yeah, I was familiar with it. And then we ended up getting Kit, formerly ConvertKit, now Kit as our email platform. So we kind of have both of those right now. We're trying to figure out how to utilize.
Nice. Yeah. So what's been fun about having a podcast and then what's been not so fun?
Well, part of what's been fun is it's a very creative endeavor and getting to do a creative endeavor with your best friend is a pretty fun thing. And additionally, I would say getting to talk to a bunch of your heroes just because you have a podcast is pretty rad. We got to talk to my favorite rapper, Propaganda. We got to talk to my favorite therapist, Dan Allender. And we got to talk to, like you said, John Deloney, Annie Downs, Ben Zobrist. Just people that we have admired for a long time. And the only reason we're getting to talk to them is because we have a podcast. Yeah. That's pretty cool. What's been not so fun? The growing pains. It's the more success we had with the podcast, the more energy it required. And our schedules didn't allow for expanded space last year for that. So it was really just a lot more energy and all of our time got compressed. And, a lot of our friendship became about how do we make space to talk about this and still maintain our friendship, which was the root source of and like why this all matters. Yeah. So the time issue was the not so fun thing, but that's a hard thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah, ditto to both of those. It's been really fun to do it creatively. It's a great way to practice and develop your confidence in your own voice and speaking. I would like to think that the amount of likes and ums that we just have in our normal vocabulary decreased over the year. I don't know. I don't want to go back and compare. However, I would say it has translated to like just working the muscle of doing it in an authentic way has helped as a communicator, I would say for me. And doing it with Jamie has been like just so fun. for our friendship. And then the first thing that came to my mind, which I don't know what this says, probably won't surprise Jamie, of the hard part is it's hard to make money from. Like that's
True.
a reality, is that we, in the first year, and our goal was we knew we weren't going to make any money on it. We're just focused on the consistency and building an audience, and maybe we'll have offerings later. So we didn't have any product or thing that, other than like maybe getting a couple clients, which we weren't even really using it as that. We didn't have a thing that the podcast was pointing toward as far as a financial return. And we had some conversations with some brands about sponsorships, and that just like isn't easy either, especially when you're doing it on your own. So yeah, we have ideas, again, way more intentional ideas this year of how we're going to monetize the podcast with our own products, and knowing that that still will be a difficult challenge. But yeah, it's a lot of time and investment for us, at least in the first year. Maybe it'll change if we talked a year from now without a lot of financial return. But we weren't just doing it for financial return. So
yeah, that's the thing about starting a podcast is it's very much a long game. And yeah, it takes a while to grow an audience and takes a while to make the monetization side work well and figure out what makes the most sense and bring in value. What are you guys most excited about for the future of 3% as a ministry and as a podcast?
I am excited for 3%. I'm excited to create spaces that allow us to foster even deeper, meaningful connection with the people who already listen.
Yeah.
In-person retreats, groups, things like that. To have like a deeper, I'm excited to have a deeper impact with our community and also a broader impact. We've got some pretty big goals and dreams. And the amount, like honestly, I said it was kind of hard not having a financial return on investment, but the maybe emotional return on investment, like hundreds of reviews and messages and DMs that we got from people over the first season.
Nice. Yeah.
Not just like, oh, hey, this is a great show, but like how it impacted them or how it's fostered a conversation with their kid or their parent was so encouraging. And so I feel like excited about the thought of making that opportunity happen for even more people on a broader scale.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's pretty adjacent to what I'm excited about. I am very excited for what Blake just said. And I would say also for the people that we're going deeper with, I'm excited for them to have relationships with each other.
Sure. Yeah.
And
like the community.
Like for this community to become really that, not something where we have relationship with each of them, but they all have relationship with each other. Because one of our hopes with this community is that people would get to experience the gifts of 12-step recovery without having to necessarily qualify for 12-step recovery. And one of the biggest gifts of 12-step recovery is the community you get. And I've never felt less alone than when in that community. And I think that there are plenty of men and women, but men who we're trying to reach who feel that.
Yeah.
And I think we can create spaces where they don't have to.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to do that.
Nice. All right. Well, as we come to the close of the episode, we're going to jump into the EQ segment where we ask about what's getting cut and what's getting boosted. So first, what's something you're trying to cut out of your life right now?
I should have read these questions beforehand. Jamie, you go first.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually in the middle of a fast right now.
Okay.
And so part of that is trying to lean into, pray through, cutting out my self-reliance. I am deeply self-reliant. Some of that's my story. Go listen to 3% if you want to hear that story. But that gets in the way of a really healthy and attached relationship to God, which gets in the way of trust, which has lots of other issues that stem from it. Not to say I don't have a worthwhile relationship with him, but the part that I'm noticing that needs care, and I will say a new responsibility, is the part of me that is self-reliant.
It's good. What came up for me is resentment, like just working on letting go of resentment especially toward people that there can't be or doesn't need to be repair with that person specifically. So the resentment is more so harming me. And then, I believe that unexpressed hurt over time turns into resentment. So like cutting resentment looks like continuing to expand my capacity to express when I'm hurt by people.
Yeah. All right. What's a practice that you're trying to boost or focus your time and energy on right now?
Being bored.
He wrote a really good Substack article on that.
Allowing myself to be bored.
Yeah.
It's just two young kids, building a business while also running another business and always having something constantly to do. And even like the age of AI, helping with being able to help with idea generation, just allowing myself to be bored and not do anything and read a book or sit outside, not on any device. And I've done that. I've intentionally like carved time to do that. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I actually have like original creative ideas if I would just like slow down and create some quiet space in my head.
Yeah.
It's along those lines, but I'm currently reading The Body Teaches the Soul by Justin Whitmore Early. And there are a lot of practices in that book that I'm currently trying to boost. I love the EQ thing, man. I'm trying to boost those for sure. Specifically, there are some practices of Sabbath that I'm really interested in working on right now, and kind of daily Sabbath things too. One of the things he recommends in that book is having your phone off for 1 hour each day. So I've been doing that. That's nice. And what does my daily spiritual habit look like? So it's a lot of creating the structure that supports me in this stage of life where, like Blake said, both of us have 2 young kids and now 2 businesses. So what does the structure look like that I don't respond with, how are you doing? I'm busy. I don't want that to be my response. I want my response to be, I'm doing well, and here's why.
That's good.
I like that.
All right. Well, as we close today's episode, who else do you think would be a great guest for this podcast?
I actually thought of a newer friend as we're chatting, Jeff and Beth McCord. You may have already had them on. I don't know.
I haven't.
They're from here, Enneagram coaches. I was actually just chatting with him yesterday, and they have a super successful podcast. I think they crossed like 5 million downloads and actually took a break from it for various reasons and are kind of rethinking how to step back into it. I know it's been a pretty instrumental tool in their lives and business. And he's just a really, really generous, down-to-earth guy.
Yeah, man. I feel like you could look at everybody we've talked to in the last year.
A lot of our guests have their own podcasts.
Exactly, yeah.
I think, have you talked to David Thomas before?
I haven't, no.
Be a good one too.
Yeah.
David Thomas, he's one of the heads of Daystar Counseling, and their ministry is incredible. And I think has a unique heart for caring for kids in a way that sometimes mental health can skip over. I know that even Blake and I work with adults, that there's nothing wrong with working with adults. Adults need care too. But I love Daystar's heart to care for the adult who is being developed.
Well, guys, thank you so much for sharing your journey and all the different pieces that make up the podcasting journey, with talking about, creating the music and doing the Substack side of things. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us on, Tim. This was fun.
Yeah, this is fun to be on the other end of it and like really think about it for us in a different way.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Jamie and Blake, getting to hear how their podcasting journey started unintentionally while pursuing a business idea together that then developed into their ministry, which has now impacted so many lives. You can listen to their podcast, 3%, with the link in the show notes. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Ministries the Podcast, produced by Sonomorphic. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. That's the best way to support this show, and together we'll help more ministries grow and thrive through podcasting. Now come back in 2 weeks to hear my conversation with Tasha Calvert. She's the women's minister at Prestonwood Baptist Church, an author, speaker, and host of Digging In with Tasha Calvert. We're going to talk about the connection between the Bible studies at church and the podcast conversations, how episodes have become a valuable resource in her ministry, and the opportunity to meet people she wouldn't encounter otherwise because of podcasting. Well, until next time, keep encouraging your audience as they follow Jesus.